all had something to say. Louder, faster, sharper. Their words filled every corner of my mind, opinions like bullets, laughter like knives, judgments echoing like gunshots in a hall. With no exits, they shouted over my truth, twisted my silence into weakness, mistook my calm for consent. They built a world from noise and buried me beneath it. I remember the chaos, how every voice demanded something. Speak softer, be smaller, hide your fire, swallow your pain, smile, even as you bleed. And so I did. I played their game. I wore the mask. I danced to the rhythm of their demands, but every step cracked my bones. Every lie they made me live tore something from my soul. I became a stranger in my own skin. The world around me moved like a storm, screaming, raging, devouring, while I stood in the eye of it all, silent. But silence isn't peace. Not when it's forced. Not when it's the only shield you have left. It's a prison. It's a scream with no sound. It's the final breath before the fall. They called me quiet, but they never noticed the fire building in that quiet. They never saw the fists I clenched in my pockets, the truths I bit back until my mouth filled with blood. They didn't hear the noise I swallowed just to survive. They made me invisible, until one day, I realized if they can't hear me, then they won't hear me coming. Let them speak. Let them shout. Let them drown in their noise, because I no longer need to raise my voice to tear their world apart. This was the beginning, the moment the silence stopped being survival and became my weapon. Let them keep talking, while I sharpen every second of quiet into the blade that ends them. They buried me in noise, not in silence, in words. Their lies were louder than my truth, their laughter sharp enough to bleed, their judgments daggers dressed in smiles. And every time I spoke, they spoke louder. They talked over me, not because they couldn't hear me, but because they didn't want to. They weren't afraid of my silence. They were afraid of what would happen if I ever truly spoke. So they filled the air with poison. They rewrote my story with ink made of rumors and spit. They said I was too much, then said I was never enough. They painted me as the villain in their fairy tales and expected me to apologize for being the storm. I tried to explain. I tried to defend. But my words never stood a chance, because in their world, truth is a threat, and I was a loaded gun. They told me to calm down. While setting fire to my name, they said I was dramatic. As they twisted my pain into their performance, they said I was broken, while they were the ones holding the hammer. You see, it wasn't the silence that hurt. It was being buried alive beneath their words, buried under fake concern, buried under just kidding S, buried under your too sensitive S, buried under every whispered judgment, every backhanded compliment, every empty apology that ended in "but you." They didn't want peace. They wanted power. And they got it, for a while. But here's what they never understood. Every time they tried to silence me, they were sharpening me. Every time they tried to define me, they were erasing the version of me that cared to explain. And now, I owe them nothing. I don't owe them clarity. I don't owe them answers. I don't owe them softness where they gave me blades. They tried to bury me beneath their words, but I became the silence that suffocates. And now, they're the ones choking. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. It means strategy. And while they kept talking, I started watching. While they threw dirt, I grew roots. Let them speak. Let them shout. Let them sing their lies into the wind. Because now, my silence is louder than their screams. And when they realize I'm no longer listening, when they realize I no longer flinch at their voices, that's when the silence begins to haunt them. They buried me in noise. But I rose in silence, and I never forgot a single word. They say I vanished, like I faded into the shadows, like silence swallowed me whole. No, I didn't disappear. I chose to walk away. I chose to go quiet, and in that silence, I became something else. They thought my absence was weakness, that I had given up, that I broke under their pressure. No, I didn't break. I evolved. Let them believe I ran. Let them believe I was afraid. It makes the return so much sweeter. I didn't disappear to escape the war. I disappeared to become the weapon. You see, there is an art to disappearing. It's not about hiding. It's about watching, studying, detaching, becoming immune to their noise, their chaos, their manipulation. I walked away from the circus, the loud mouths, the fake alliances, the poison praise. I walked away from expectations, from begging to be understood, from proving my worth to people who never saw it to begin with. They don't realize what silence can do to someone like me. It doesn't kill me. It clears the static. It rewires the soul. I didn't disappear to be forgotten. I disappeared so I could remember who I was before they taught me to doubt it. When you disappear, they panic. They talk louder. They lie more. They rewrite the story to make themselves feel better. Let them scream into the void. Let them try to erase what they can no longer control. Because here's the truth they never saw coming. In solitude, I rebuilt. In isolation, I sharpened. And in silence, I transformed. Disappearing was never the end. It was the beginning of the beast they can no longer touch. They used to know me. That version died quietly. Now, I am nothing they can predict, nothing they can guilt, nothing they can break. I left not to disappear, but to become undeniable. So, let them search for the version they buried in their lies. Let them wonder where I went. Let them miss the sound of my pain. Because when I return, I won't be heard. I'll be felt. And that is the true art of disappearing. They thought I was gone. They thought silence meant defeat. But silence was the forge. While they laughed, I listened. While they moved on, I stood still, not frozen, but sharpening. Every quiet second became a hammer. Every ignored breath became a blueprint. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I didn't explain. I rebuilt, not with their pity, not with their permission, but with my rage, refined into clarity. They mistook my absence for emptiness. They couldn't see what was being born beneath the stillness. A voice not louder but heavier. A presence not brighter but darker. A storm not loud but inevitable. I bled in silence. I broke in silence. I rose in silence. They'll never understand what it took to remain calm while everything inside me was screaming. They'll never know the restraint it takes to not become the monster they deserve. But I learned. God, I learned that power isn't found in shouting. It's in what you withhold. It's in what you endure. It's in what you refuse to explain. Let them gossip. Let them guess. Let them write their stories with half the truth and none of the spine. Because while they built noise, I built something unshakable. My silence wasn't passive. It was precise, calculated, relentless. Every time I held my tongue, I was feeding the fire. Every time I swallowed the pain, I was sharpening the blade. Now, I don't need to prove anything. I am the proof. They'll say I changed. They'll say I became cold, detached, unrecognizable. Good. Because the version of me they once knew was built on apologies, on approval, on desperation to be understood. That version died quietly. No funeral, no closure, just a final breath in the shadows. What remains isn't here to be accepted. It's here to be remembered, feared, felt. I didn't come back to scream. I came back so my silence could haunt them. So every room they walk into feels emptier without me. So every conversation they have echoes with the things I never said. Let them sit in the comfort of their illusions. Let them believe I've vanished. But in every moment they doubt, in every quiet night they can't sleep, they'll feel it, the weight of everything I didn't say, the shadow of everything I became, the silence I used to rebuild, now surrounds them, and it's louder than anything they've ever heard. They thought I disappeared. They thought I broke. That silence meant surrender. That absence meant defeat. But silence was strategy. Disappearance was design. And now, I return not as who I was, but as what I became. Not to speak. Not to explain. not to be understood, but to be remembered. They expected an apology, a plea, a ghost of the version they buried. But I didn't come back with my head bowed. I came back crowned by everything they tried to crush. I let them laugh, let them mock, let them call it running. But while they rotted in comfort, I was rebuilding in the dark. Every insult became armor, every betrayal a blade. Every memory they thought would haunt me, I forged it into war paint. I am not here for revenge. I am not here to prove them wrong. I am here to prove me right. They always asked, "Where did you go?" I didn't go anywhere. I just stepped back so they could fall forward. And now I walk without sound, but with impact. Now I speak without raising my voice, yet their bones shake. Now I stand in the same room and they can't breathe, because they know what they did. They know who I became. Let them feel it. Let their conscience scream where my silence used to be. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them drown in the echo of the words I'll never say. Because what I've become doesn't need explanation. It demands recognition. They called it silence, but it was strategy. They called it weakness, but it was transformation. They called it goodbye, but it was a beginning. So don't mistake my return for reunion. I didn't come back for peace. I came back so my existence would haunt their comfort, so my silence would echo in their guilt, so my presence would remind them what happens when you try to bury someone who plants themselves in the grave. I'm not back to reclaim anything. I am the thing now. The lesson, the warning, the consequence. They prayed I'd come back crawling, but I walk unshaken. They wanted a whisper, but I became thunder. And now let them feel what silence truly sounds like. It sounds like power. It sounds like return. It sounds like me. They wanted noise. They thrived in chaos, in arguments, in rumors, in applause. They needed the sound of their own voices to feel alive. But I took it from them. Not with war, not with words, but with the silence they always feared. The silence they thought meant surrender. They were wrong. I didn't go quiet because I was broken. I went quiet because I was done explaining, done bleeding for people who only knew how to scratch, done screaming into voids that echoed with ego. You see, silence is a weapon, and I learned how to wield it like a blade. While they shouted, I studied. While they laughed, I listened. While they thought I disappeared, I was becoming something they couldn't interpret, something they couldn't predict, something they couldn't destroy. Now they don't know what I'm thinking. They don't know where I stand. They don't know if I'll strike or simply vanish again. And that terrifies them. Let them squirm in the absence of noise. Let them choke on the quiet they used to ignore. Let them stare into the void where my voice used to be and feel the weight of every word I chose not to say. Because silence never begs. It never explains. It never pleads. Silence watches, silence waits. And when it moves, it's already too late. They wanted a reaction. I gave them reflection. They wanted chaos. I left them with consequence. Let my silence haunt them. Let it follow them like a shadow they can't outrun. Let it sit in every room they enter, reminding them of what they lost. Let it grow louder with every moment they remember me, not for what I said, but for what I didn't need to say. Because silence is not weakness. It is the final form of strength. It is the moment when you stop defending and start watching them destroy themselves. I won't scream. I won't explain. I won't return to the noise that tried to bury me. I'll let my absence speak in frequencies they can't escape. Let silence haunt them. Let it crawl into their minds and twist the knife of regret. Let it echo in their bones. Let it rot in their conscience. They thought silence meant defeat. No. It was the sound of my ascension, the calm before their storm. Let silence haunt them. Forever. They thought this was the end. But silence has no end. It lingers. It stains the walls. It rots the air they breathe. And when all the shouting stops, it's all they hear. Me. The absence of me. The weight of everything I never said. Let them run from it. Let them drown in it, because I've become the ghost they cannot bury. And my silence, it will outlive their screams. They wanted me loud, predictable, broken. They wanted me to beg, to plead, to crawl just to be seen. But I gave them nothing, and nothing, it goes longer than words ever could. I used to chase closure. I used to bleed for explanations. I used to believe that if they just understood, they would care. But some people are addicted to misunderstanding you, because your truth threatens their illusion, because your silence reminds them they were never enough to break you. So I gave them what they feared most. No answer, no reaction, no goodbye, just silence. And now they live with it, because silence is louder when it comes from someone who once loved you. It's heavier when it comes from someone you used to control. And it's deadly when it comes from someone you thought would never leave. Look at them now, replaying old memories, rereading old messages, reimagining what they destroyed. Let them wonder. Let them rot in what ifs. Let them scream into the void where I used to be. Because I didn't vanish. I ascended. They thought I was gone, but I became a legend they can't erase. I became the stillness that shakes them awake at 3 a.m. The pause in every song, the cold in every smile. I stopped explaining, and suddenly they started listening. But it's too late now, because I owe them nothing, not my voice, not my pain, not my story. I used to think silence was weakness, that if I didn't speak, I'd be forgotten. But silence, true silence, is power. It's the sharpest blade, the cleanest cut, the final word in a war they thought they won. Let them keep talking. Let them rewrite the story. Let them play the hero in a tale built on their own betrayal. I won't correct them. I won't defend myself, because the truth doesn't beg to be believed. And silence always knows. I became the echo that never fades. I became the shadow that doesn't move. The storm they thought had passed, but never really left. They'll hear me in the quiet. They'll feel me in the stillness. They'll remember me in the silence between their lies. And that will be enough, because I no longer need revenge. I don't need apologies. I don't need justice. I became my own. I don't haunt them with rage. I haunt them with calm, with peace, with distance, with the version of me they could have had but destroyed, with the silence I used to beg them to break, but now use as a crown. I am the sentence they'll never finish, the voice they'll never unhear, the soul they'll never. UNLOVE. This is my power, not in what I say, but in what I never will. Let silence haunt them. Let it eat at their sleep. Let it chase them into their own thoughts, because I'm done talking. And now they listen.